Good afternoon, colleagues. We are back from recess. Speaker Barnes, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to you and all my colleagues. Madam Speaker, if I may, I'd like to move Bill number 86-35 COR as substituted on the floor to be accepted.
There has been a motion to move 86-35 as substituted on the floor.
To be accepted.
Does everyone have a copy of the bill? Senator Lee, you are recognized.
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, just a point of inquiry. If the mover of this motion could explain to the body, to the members of the body, what the changes were made in the substitute version that is attempting to be adopted this morning or this afternoon.
Thank you, Senator
Sijus
Lee.
Masi.
Speaker Barnes, do you yield to the point of
Madam
inquiry?
Speaker, I was going to do that, but in all fairness to what was requested by some of my colleagues, to ask that the substituted version be passed out and be given to my colleagues so that they could have time. I do have an explanation, but I was hoping that I could speak to it when I do my opening presentation. So it does have the revisions as recommended and working closely with our legal counsel. This bill was on the agenda last month, and we had asked to set it aside to make some of the structural changes, and I wanted to make that definition further defined when I speak on the motion on the floor.
Senator Lee, does that yield to your point of inquiry that she may speak to the motion on the floor, or would you want something further clarified?
Sijus Masi, Madam Speaker. Actually, in order to adopt this version as substituted, it would make me feel a lot better if we could have those items. I do have the prior bill that we discussed that was on agenda for last session, but I just wanted to hear kind of the response from the mover of this motion so that we could all be on the same page and understand what it is that we're adopting here.
Thank you. Speaker Barnes, before we move to accept Bill 86-30 floor as substituted on the floor, would you please respond to the point of inquiry?
Madam Speaker, if I may, working closely with legal counsel on this legislation, on Bill 86-35 as substituted. The substitute version includes amendments to make the provisions as clear and easily understandable as easily as possible, as to align some of the definitions to the United States Sign Council. And Bill number 86 was introduced to clarify our zoning laws regarding on-premise signs on H resort property. It was the foresight of the senators in the 14th Guam Legislature that saw the need to develop Tumon into an important driver for our economy by rezoning the Bay Area H resort. Madam Speaker, working closely with legal counsel on this and working on the provisions of what was there, we did literally make some of the revisions and the definitions to truly align ourselves with the sign code.
Senator Lee, does that answer your point of inquiry?
She can object.
Do you have an objection? Okay, there has been a motion to move to accept Bill number 86-35 as substituted on the floor. Everyone was handed a copy. So let us vote on this motion. Are there any objections to moving Bill number 86-35 as substituted on the floor? No objections? Motion passes. Speaker
And-
Barnes,
thank
you are
you.
recognized.
And thank you, Madam Speaker, again on the effort to making sure that my colleagues have the substituted version as accepted. I'd like to extend my thank yous for that, but also give them the opportunity to further look at the bill and if there's any increase before that. So I'd like to move it to the bottom of the agenda, if I may, please, to
Thank-
give our colleagues enough time to look at the bill.
There has been a motion to pass on file bill number 86-35.
To push it down to the bottom of the agenda.
To move down to the bottom of the agenda. Any objections? No objections? Motion passes. Thank you.
We're going to take a second Senator James Moylan? We'll take a moment's recess. Y minuto 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Senator James Moylan on bill number 104-35 LS. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I would like to start off by basically saying that Bill 104-35,
Senator Moylan, if I may, can you please move it to the third reading so we can discuss? And if you can read the title, please.
okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to request for Bill 104-35 to be LS to be moved to third reading file.
And if you can just read the title.
Yes. Bill 104-35 is an act to amend subsection 58104Q, subsection 58105, subsection 58116, subsection 58117 alpha, and subsection 58128.3 of Chapter 58, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, to add Article 8 to Chapter 26, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated relative to those corporations repatriating at least $5 million of their deferred foreign income to Guam, the repatriation tax to create a repatriated profits fund, its guidelines, and to establish a third-party agents industry for Guam.
On the third reading file, you can proceed to discuss, Senator Moylan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to start off by stating that Bill 104-35 does not create a new tax rebate or a new qualifying certificate program. Rather, it's just a technical or administrative fix to ensure that the administrative structure is in place around an existing law, to assure that it can be enforced. So we're not reinventing any new wheels here. Public Law 34103 was enacted in the previous legislature, the 34th. And this was a measure introduced by former Senator, now Congressman Michael Nicholas. It was also introduced by my colleagues, a few of my colleagues here today as well. It was also supported by some of our other colleagues here too, and it passed unanimously. And that law, 34103, was intended to take advantage of the provisions in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, which reduced the tax associated with the repatriation of U.S. corporation profits from their foreign subsidies. Because of Guam's unique ability to provide some tax relief, it was designed to be a great opportunity to generate new monies for the island. But the timelines were limited. So at the start of our term in the 35th legislature, we were approached by many parties, including government entities, who stated that there was no structure that existed to effectively enact that Public Law 34103. So that we can be assured that such monumental feat can be accomplished. So that's the genesis of this bill, 10435, which is in front of us today. The question is, will the passing of this legislation guarantee new funds into the government coffers? Well, honestly, we don't know. But what we're sure, the interest was very strong at the start of the year when the bill was first introduced back in April 23rd of 2019. But with the increase in the repatriation tax over the summer, we can't gauge that interest today. But that should not prevent us from passing this measure, establishing an administrative structure so that parties know how to show their interest, and our government knows how to proceed. What Bill 10435 does, it establishes a repatriation profits fund, and it identifies the roles of the Guam Economic Development Authority and the Department of Administration and the Department of Revenue and Taxation when it comes to addressing an application for someone to repatriate their foreign profits. It also provides timelines and ensuring that any tax rebate is in a lockbox and provides some financial support for Department of Revenue and Taxation. Bill 104 also enhances a third-party agents industry, including their ability to negotiate commissions from interested parties. This means the potential of a new tax revenue entering our island. Plus, the simplicity would allow almost any resident to pursue the role as a third party. Our greatest marketing tool is our people. And in this day and age when our government is finding ways to provide opportunities for island residents to seek financial independence, the legislation is a great example of accomplishing that feat. So Bill 104 provides GITA a percentage of the repatriated funds in the form of community contributions so that they can infuse the monies into additional economic activities on the island. So the question does still remain on the tax rebate established by Public Law 34103. During our discussion with various government entities, there was certainly additional legalities that lingered. But some of these agencies have stated if applications to take advantage of this program are submitted, they will pursue further inquiries at that time. Therefore, this may be a good problem to have. So passing Bill 104 would allow this step to take place. Will Bill 104 generate millions for the government of Guam? Well, once again, that's a difficult question to address, but I assure you one thing, that passing this bill would certainly help us in seeking that answer. If no applicants submit their interest, then at least we've used our due diligence in trying. If the act generates millions, then we may have some funds to address critical needs. So let's seek that answer, and I ask for your support in Bill 10435. Madam Speaker, I would also, we passed around an amendment, and with that in mind, I'd like to just go over that amendment as well, Madam Speaker.
This one?
So one of the concerns that were raised by Governor Lou Leon Guerrero a few months back was that Bill 10435 would not require that any entity seeking the benefits of repatriation to employ island residents. Our position is that this is a unique arrangement, a pass-through, so to speak, that an employment requirement may not fit into the equation of an entity strictly seeking to repatriate their funds through Guam, plus the economic benefits that our island would profit from. So it definitely stands to be far greater. That, including additional regulations, may impact this program. But further, we believe that Bill 10435 would create new opportunities for the island residents through the enhancement of third-party agents. However, I do understand the objectives of the governor wishes to accomplish, and therefore, I'd like to make a motion to strike out Section 4 and 5 from the bill. These sections were included to exempt repatriating entities from being mandated to create employment. By removing these sections, it would revert these entities to the provision of the qualifying certificate, which was created by Public Law 34103, of which one of the provisions would be to assure the beneficiary creates jobs. So we submitted the amendment already, Madam Speaker, so it basically, per the bill, eliminates, on page 7, eliminates lines 8 through 86, which is to delete sections 4 and 5 of the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Situos Masi, Senator Moylan. On the motion, anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? Anyone wishing? Senator Lee, you are recognized.
Suzus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a question if the author will yield.
Please go ahead and state your question.
Madam Speaker, it's my understanding, based on the language in this proposed amendment and the language in the bill, that this would actually strike, it would strike the GCA, Guam Code Annotated, in its entirety, not just specific to this bill and specific to the companies that are attempting to win this repatriation. So just so that we're all on the same page, the qualifying certificate is a tool that the Guam Economic Development Authority uses to bring new business to Guam or to spur industry here on our island. And the authority uses these proposed activities of the beneficiary, but it's not a blanket gift. These companies are still required to promote the general economic development of Guam by spurring employment, by replacing imports, by reducing prices, and that's all listed here. So my question to the author is, if we're deleting the requirements to employ U.S. citizens and permanent residents and to build our workforce, we're making changes to the qualifying certificate piece of the bill. Am I reading that correctly, or am I just...
Senator Lee, we're going to go ahead and take a moment's recess.
Please.
I'm conferring with legal right now. Eminent 35 na legislatura in Guam is back from recess. Senator Lee, you had the floor. Did you want to proceed with Senator Moylan answering? Yes, Senator Moylan, would you like to yield to Senator Lee?
Oh, certainly, Madam Speaker. After discussion with legal, as the bill is written, we understand that the deletion of section 4 and 5 is of the bill. It does not delete from the qualifying certificate itself. So it's just of the bill, so it's not affecting the qualifying certificate requirements as
Thank
stated.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Madam
you,
Speaker.
Senator. Senator Lee, you're okay with that? On the amendment, on the Moylan amendment, anyone else wishing to speak? If not, are there any objections? Did you want to speak on the amendment? Oh, there's an objection to the amendment. All those in favor of the Senator Moylan amendment to delete? Did you want to close, Senator, on the amendment to delete section 4 and 5? He already did. Did you want, Senator Moylan, you can close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, the bill is basically to reinforce an existing public law. The law is in place at that time, and it wasn't workable because the entities involved or the stakeholders involved were missing some key components. So Bill 10435 puts it all together. It's an existing law that gives the strength for these agencies, Department of Revenue and Taxation, Department of Administration, to come together, and GITA as well. This time we also are giving some of the proceeds, like 1%, goes to the Department of Revenue and Taxation to assist them in monies quite necessary for them to add to their personnel.
On the amendment, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Speaker. But going back to the amendments then, this then is just the deletion of section 4 and 5, and it enforces what the Governor, Louis Leon Guerrero, has requested, that we do not overstep anything on the qualifying certificate. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. There is the Senator Moylan amendment. Is there an objection? There is an objection. All those who support the Jim Moylan amendment by deleting section 4 and 5, please signify by raising your hand. 4, 6, 8 with me. Motion carries. On the main motion, on the main question, anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? On the main question, Senator Tello, I will address you on the main motion.
Point of inquiry, or point of order, Madam Speaker. Forgive me, Senator. Point of order.
Point of order, please state the violation of the point of order, Vice Speaker Nelson.
We counted 7 on the floor. Can the clerk
Yes.
just verify who?
On the motion to delete, yes, there was 8.
There was 8.
There was 8.
Okay, thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. And on the main motion, Senator Titagui, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank
On
you,
Bill
Speaker,
104.
for the opportunity to speak on Bill 104-35. You know, I was one of the few that was not able to sit in a meeting that was put together to kind of explain the whole process of what's really going on here. And I took it upon myself to do some research and discuss this with other individuals who know more about the tax laws and how this type of incentives for big companies to come to Guam and utilize this place for their opportunity to save some money on their taxes. You know, as long as it benefits Guam, you know, I don't see any issue with it. However, I was concerned about one thing. Is this federally okay to do. And I think that when I was talking to good author of the bill, he assured me that the Department of Revenue and Taxation is totally involved with this. They know how they even wrote a letter to the extent that the new tax applies to the last taxable year of a specific foreign company corporation beginning January 2018, and the taxes included in the U.S. shares tax year in which it will be specified. But it also doesn't say in here that they will continue to review the IRS Form 96-5 from any U.S. corporations to see if it's applicable to Guam. So even though we passed this bill, which is a great idea to do, a way to generate revenue for our island, I feel confident enough to know that our Department of Revenue and Taxation is going to do everything possible to make sure that we do everything correctly, even when it comes to the federal government's requirements. And I think that's important for all of us to know that, that security there of them staying on top of it. So there's more involved in this letter that they sent, but I do know that from the good author that he's given me the assurance that Rev and Tax will be there from the beginning to the end. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Senator Chaidagui. Anyone else on the main motion? I have Senator Torres and Assistant Majority Leader. Senator Torres, I will recognize you first. Senator Marsh Taichano, you are recognized on the main motion.
Sainamaasi, Madam Speaker. There are a few issues that have come to my attention that I think make this bill problematic. One of them is looking at, this came out a while ago, well, not so long ago, it was just October 14th, there was an article in the Marianas Variety, and it mentions the EU removing certain areas from the blacklist as tax havens, but that Guam still remains there. So on one hand, Guam already has a reputation for not having many regulations in place for actions such as these, and I would say that this seems to further challenge that. But also, if we look at our own budget law, which we just passed, in the budget law, and it should be being passed around, page 138, it refers to qualifying certificates. So has everybody received that? Hopefully they have. So on page 138, there's a section 3, suspension of renewals or extensions of qualifying certificates. And so towards the bottom of this, it mentions that any new first-time applicants, or applications for qualifying certificates shall be approved by Legislature in Guam prior to approval by Magahagan Guam. So there are many more steps here in place than the bill indicates, and this lends us to understand that our understanding at that time was that we were going to be looking very carefully and thoughtfully at each and every single application, and in general, perhaps not widening or opening that avenue. The other is, here there is an executive order, and my understanding it is still active, signed by Governor Calvo. And on page 2, it mentions, now therefore I, Eddie Baza Calvo, Governor of Guam, by the authority vested in me, etc. Number 1, he placed an indefinite moratorium suspending the renewal or extension of qualifying certificates And even though new applications are not affected, again, this is leading us to understand that people are looking at our qualifying certificate program very carefully and trying to protect it. Actions like this, I've heard, as much as I want to support new avenues of revenue from Guam, we are desperately in need of new revenue, that there are concerns that this is going to jeopardize the QC program, that we may actually lose our ability to continue to have a QC program. And there have already been other mentions as well by the Revenue and Tax. They have some issues. I've heard that GITA has concerns. So I guess within all of this, I wanted to bring these points of information forward, but I did want to ask the author, and I apologize if I missed it somewhere, if he has a letter of support from GITA saying that they support this, this bill.
Si Zeus Masi, Senator Teichno. Senator Jim Moylan, would you like to yield to the question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the question as well. Is GITA in support of this? Well, GITA, through numerous meetings with GITA, they were never, the bill itself is to reinforce an existing public law, 34103. And the problem with 34103 is that there were no procedures in place for GITA, for DRT, and Department of Revenue Taxation, and DOA. How did they implement Public Law 34103? So after talking with GITA, Department of Administration, and Department of Revenue and Tax, we discovered how that could be. So we're basically giving the tools that each of those agencies needed to implement Public Law 34103, which was passed in the 34th Guam Legislature unanimously. They wanted to take advantage of the Tax Cuts Jobs Acts, the Trump tax cuts. They wanted to attract companies to repatriate their money back to the United States, and we needed to compete against those U.S. states for them to have a reason to come to Guam. They were interested then, they are interested now for that to happen. Do we know if any will actually participate and submit their applications? At this point, since it's been so long, I don't actually know. But there could be companies on Guam that may be interested, that have businesses in Asia side as well, that would wish to repatriate their money. So yes, GITA was involved. GITA is part of this structure and planning, and they made the recommendations, and we put it into Bill 10435. The other part of the question, it doesn't change any of the qualifying certificate requirements. Currently, after somebody tries to get a QC from GITA, and they do all their grand presentation to GITA, then they had to come back and present to the Guam Legislature to do the same thing all over again, after speaking with experts at GITA on how to define it. But they wanted one more checks and balances, and that's in the current law, so that doesn't change. So if there was an applicant who is interested in repatriating no less than $5 million back to the United States, that person or that company would have to follow the same procedures that are currently in law. It doesn't remove that. It just gives the talking points or how the different agencies need to come together. And on the executive order, Governor Cabo had signed back then on the indefinite moratorium suspending and the renewal or extensions of qualifying certificates. You know, that was then, but this is now. You know, I'm hoping that if this bill does pass and it gives strength to the original law, 34103, and we do have an interested party that does pass the muster of Department of Revenue and Taxation, that does pass the qualifications of GITA. These guys are the experts. We're just letting them talk and figure it out. And they do have that third-party agent interested, and they work it all out, and they present it to the governor. I think that the governor will be open to making a change to the executive order. That can easily be done. Things change, things move on. We do have a shortfall of money, a lot of money. And when we go back to the budget bill, we could probably have given a lot of agencies a lot more, or at least what they originally wanted, but we couldn't. Here's an opportunity, whether it be 1 million that comes in, that goes back into Guam coffers, or whether it be hundreds of millions. I don't know. But I know at least the existing law just needs something so these agencies can talk. We talk to the stakeholders. We're going to leave it up to the experts, but we're giving them what they need for that original public law to work. So I hope that answered the questions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator March-Titano?
So my takeaway from that is that there is not a letter of support from Gita. That's my largest takeaway. And I would feel uncomfortable supporting something that those that issue and manage these qualifying certificates have not demonstrated in written testimony that they support this. What I've heard is that Gita is not in support of this, and so it runs very contrary to the very glowing depiction that was provided. So it answers, in a sense, that there is no written letter of support by Gita. The rest of what was provided as an answer, as I mentioned, runs very contrary to what I've heard. So I would like to see a letter of support if this is to go forward, because it has such large implications to our whole QC program meant to benefit our community very definitely. And I feel that it undermines some of the special care that we were highlighting in the budget bill just actually a very short time ago. And the executive order also asked for special care for the qualifying certificates. And I, for one, don't think of 2018 as that was then, and 2019 is this is now. So, Saina Maasi for letting me provide some of that information and ask my question.
Thank you, Senator Titano. On the main motion, Senator Torres and then Senator San Agustin. Senator Mary Torres, I'll recognize you now. I understand you want to yield to Senators Joe San Agustin first. Senator San Agustin, I will acknowledge you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'd like to just, I guess, introduce or ask that a letter that should have been part of the committee report that has been passed out to all my colleagues be officially added to the report. And this is the letter that Senator Tello brought up about the letter from the Department of Revenue and Tax.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Senator San Agustin, would you like to talk about on the main motion?
I would only talk about it briefly. I'm waiting for input from the director and from their technical research and appeals board folks to determine if, in fact, if my colleagues would look at the letter on the the fourth and fifth paragraph where our colleague had read out loud. The new tax applies to the last taxable year of specified foreign corporation beginning before January 1st, 2018. And the tax is includable in the U.S. shareholder tax year with which the specified foreign corporation year ends. The second paragraph is very critical. We maintain that the time to file for this specific inclusion has passed and that the Department of Revenue and Taxation cannot waive or make exception to this provision of IRS code. This bill has good intention, but this letter also says, basically, slow down. Let's make sure the bill, when passed, it goes to Revenue and Tax, and they've cleared through IRS, and that GITA can react to it, and the governor can say, yes, let me change the executive order and let me allow this QC. I'm not saying I'm against the bill has good intention, but because of this letter, I would just caution all my colleagues to slow it down just a little bit. Thank you.
C2 Esmasi, Senator San Augustine, Senator Mary Torres.
Madam Speaker, to follow up on the sentiment expressed last by the previous speaker, I believe that there is indeed a need to pause on Bill 104-35. The Internal Revenue Code and how it applies to Guam, it's a mirror code of that, has a lot of implications and on the territory or the island of Guam, and I believe that in looking at the committee report as well, there really wasn't all that much in the committee report. There were two people who testified on that would leave anyone with the confidence that this bill is ripe for discussion and vote. We also have on the file today a letter written by Revenue and Taxation which suggests that the time for file for this specific inclusion is passed and that the Department of Revenue and Taxation cannot waive or make an exception to this provision of the IRS code, Internal Revenue Service Code. So absent any hard and fast testimony provided by tax experts, by people in the accounting department, controllers who deal with the Internal Revenue Code as it applies to Guam, absent any testimony from the Guam Economic and Development Authority with regard to the practicality of such a measure, and anyone who could give us any solid grounds to believe that this bill is little more than a pipe dream to realize billions of dollars in income from repatriated profits to Guam. Absent all that, Madam Speaker, I think at the very least I would respectfully move that this bill be sent back to committee and that those questions that have yet to be answered or verified, information verified with regard to the repatriation of foreign income back to Guam, that this bill be referred to committee so that those types of questions and implications be answered by authorities who are experts in taxation, the Internal Revenue Code, and all other matters that would make this bill as presented a sensible and correct bill to debate and vote on. So with that, I make a motion that it be sent back to committee respectfully.
There is a motion to send back Bill 104-35 COR to committee. Are there any objections? There's an objection. All those in favor to send this Bill 104-35 COR back to committee signify by raising your hand, please. Yeah. Can I see the sheet? Motion carries. We're going to take a moment's recess.
We're back from recess. Colleagues, we are back from recess. Speaker Barnes, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 152-35 COR, as substituted by the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, as introduced by myself and Senator Marsh Taitano, which is an act to repeal Article 4 of Chapter 50, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, to add a new Article 2 and a new Section 3103H, both to Chapter 3, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the establishing the Guam Film Office under the Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation, to the third reading, and I would love to discuss it, Speaker, if I may.
Senator Talahi, you're recognized.
Yes, point of order, Madam Chair. I'd like to object to the placement of this bill on the agenda at this point for several reasons. First, because the title of the bill did not comply with the standing rules, which requires Rule 6.02B, which requires titles convey an accurate idea of the contents of the bill and shall be indicative of the scope of the bill and the object to be accomplished. The
I have
title,
a point of
course,
information, Madam Speaker, if I may.
If I may finish.
Please allow her to finish, Madam Speaker,
The
with her
title
point of
did not,
order.
while it describes the film industry, it did not describe the $1.5 million appropriation that is contained in this bill, Madam Speaker. My second point, Madam Speaker, is because there was a public hearing notice and a public hearing that was had on this bill, but the notice was not reasonably calculated to inform the public of the $1.5 million appropriation and did not sufficiently allow the opportunity of the public to be heard relative to that appropriation from the Tourist Attraction Fund. It's a lack of transparency and a clear contravention of the spirit and mandate of the open government law. The third point, Madam Speaker, is the referral of this bill. It was referred in contravention of Standing Rule number 10.01, which mandates that bills relating to the Tourist Attraction Fund shall be referred to the Committee on Tourism, and Standing Rule 6.01D, wherein all bills containing appropriations shall be referred to the Committee on Appropriations. And the bill requires that only in writing can a bill be re-referred to another committee after being referred to a primary committee, Madam Speaker. Finally, Madam Speaker, there is indication in the fiscal note by OFB that does not support, in accordance with our standing rules, placement of the bill on the agenda because it cannot be supported by TAF at this time. That was the findings of OFB, and by BBMR, it says that the FY 2020 appropriations from the TAF have been fully appropriated, and so that their conclusion was all proposed TAF revenues for FY 2020 have been appropriated in the governor's executive budget request. And it would cause an imbalance of $300,000 between proposed FY 2020 TAF revenues and appropriations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Speaker, if I may, on a point of information.
Speaker Barnes, you're recognized.
Si Zeus Masi, Madam Speaker, and thank you for giving me the time to state my point of information regarding the concerns on transparency in the open government law. Madam Speaker, the bill was introduced on June 3rd of 2019. A public hearing was held on July 10th, 2019. I want to note that the first notice went out on July 2nd, 2019, and a subsequent notice went out on July 7th. On the 26th of June 2019, a fiscal note was posted on the Guam Legislature's website upon its receipt from BBMR. BBMR, during the course of their research while putting together a fiscal note, read the bill, reached out to the relevant stakeholders, and the end result is the fiscal note that was provided to this body. Upon referral of this bill and during the course of accepting a committee report, both the Committee on Rules and the Legal Bureau has deemed that this bill in its entirety, inclusive of its title, is in compliance with the standing rules. Regarding the referral of the bill, the Committee on Rules has deemed that this bill be referred to the Committee on Heritage, the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs, given that this bill intends to move an entity from GITA to the Guam Educational Telecommunications Corporation, which is PBS Guam KGTF, an entity under the committee's oversight. I have spoken to the Committee on Rules Chair, who has informed me that the chairwoman did in fact have a conversation with the chairman on the Committee on Appropriations, and they both deem that the Committee on Heritage and the Arts, Parks, Guam Products, Hagåtña Revitalization, Self-Determination, and Regional Affairs be the appropriate committee to entertain this bill, Madam Speaker. The intent is simple. This intent was to take an organization that would create a new industry on Guam and move it to an entity that is better suited to entertain this matter. Attached to this letter, that I provided, Madam Speaker, is a letter from GITA showing their acceptance of this and how they ranked the film industry be implemented here on Guam, because the public law that I authored several terms ago gave the Guam Film Office the lowest priority. So in that effort, it was worked between the government agencies and the support of the administration that the intent of having a film industry introduced here that was passed into law and signed by the governor then, that this priority be re-synergized and taken from the Guam Economic Development Authority and given it to an entity that will put it in its priority. Madam Speaker, the reason why this is also noted was because based on the public hearings, it was supported that we are losing maybe up to $9 million in the industry since this public law has been passed. And GITA has shared that they have worked closely with the administration and PBS, KGTF, that this can be afforded over. So I want to note for the record as a point of information to my colleagues, and based on the processing of the bill's facilitation through the public hearing process and through getting this facilitated to take it, because it's been passed into law, from one agency and moving its resources in its entirety from one agency to another. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and give the point of information to my colleagues in the listening audience, but more importantly, Madam Speaker, to just briefly restate the motion and ask that the motion as substituted be moved to the third reading and for me to speak briefly on it. But I understand there's an objection, so
There's a point of order, Madam Chair.
state.
Senator Talahi, state your point of order.
Thank you. Well, I rose to a point of order earlier saying that the bill, according to our standing rules, is not proper to be placed on our agenda right now because it's in violation of several rules. One rule is Rule 6.01, which says that if the funding source is not sufficient, the appropriation or authorization for appropriation bills shall remain in the Committee on Appropriations, and the primary sponsor of the measure and the chairperson of the Committee on Rules shall be notified in writing of such determination. I also stated point of order on the title of the bill, and I take exception to the point of information where it was said that the Legal Bureau has deemed that this bill, inclusive of its title, is in compliance of our standing rules. I find no such statement from the Legal Bureau, Madam Speaker. And in fact, the title is in violation of our standing rules because it does not state that there is an appropriation in the bill, and therefore, as I stated earlier, it violates another rule, which is that we are going to give adequate and sufficient public notice of our hearings and our actions, and that the public should know when we are going to appropriate $1.5 million from the Tourist Attraction Fund, Madam Speaker. And if we don't stick to our rules as to open government and transparency and what titles are supposed to show, we are bypassing this transparency that we are very proud of here in the legislature. And the final rule, Madam Speaker, is that there is no discretion on the Committee on Rules chairperson or any other chairpersons to have a discussion and agree that the bill goes to a certain committee. Referrals are supposed to be done by our rules, and our rules say that appropriations from the TAF either go to the TAF, the Tourism Committee, or they go to the Appropriations Chair, Madam Speaker. There is no discretion. And the Appropriations Chair may re-refer after that, but after he deems that there is sufficient funds, which has not been accomplished in this case, Madam Speaker. And if you need those rules, those were stated earlier. 6.01, 10.02, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, on a point of information, I do know that the Committee on Rules, Madam Speaker, had this motion was brought up. There was an objection, and that based on the number of votes, that this is how the bill got onto session floor. So,
Speaker, I'm going to take a quick recess. Everyone, just give me a quick recess, please. Thank you. We are back from recess. I'm going to make a ruling notwithstanding course placement of the bill and the placement into the second reading. My ruling is that this bill shall not, my ruling is that this bill shall be removed from session agenda. Okay. You're welcome to challenge the chair to overrule my ruling, but my ruling has been made.
Madam Chair, if the question, and maybe there should have been a move to ask for recess before you made your final decision, Madam Chair. I'm
Madam
just saying
Speaker,
if you
you
can.
are out of order. I made
Okay.
the ruling. If you want to overrule the chair, then overrule the chair. Madam Speaker, with all due respect.
Madam
It's not
Speaker,
debatable unless there's a motion to overrule on overruling the chair.
so move, Madam Speaker, if I may.
There has been
On
a
the
motion
motion.
made to overrule the chair. Are there any objections? There's an objection. All those in favor to overrule the chair, please raise your hand. Is that 7? Motion fails. Speaker Barnes, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, a motion to do a recount because the number
Okay.
was tough, but I understand there is a point of information on the floor.
We will do an action to reconsider the actions of the body. So now we are going to make
Madam Speaker, just a point of personal privilege before we move to this reconsideration, the possibility of reconsideration. Madam Speaker, I'd just like to speak to the referral of Bill 152-35 COR. The bill underwent the
Point of
Committee on
order,
Rules
Madam
review
Speaker. This is out of
process,
order.
as
There's no
well as
debating on
that
this motion
the
to
bill,
reconsider.
Madam Speaker, I'm still speaking and I still have the floor. The bill
It's
underwent
a
our
debate on the
Committee on
motion, Madam
Rules
Speaker. Point of
review
order.
process.
we're going to go into a quick recess. We are back from recess. We are going to first acknowledge the reconsideration of the actions of the body and on a request to recount. And after we do the voting, Senator Lee, if you would like, you can rise in point of personal privilege. So, there has been a motion made to reconsider actions of the body. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, motion passes. To reconsider the actions of the body, there has been a motion to overrule the chair. Are there any objections to making the motion of overruling the chair? There has been an objection. All those in favor of overruling the chair, please raise your hand. Motion passes. Speaker Barnes, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, on the motion to proceed in third reading, am I correct? Or do I have to remove the motion again, Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, because this is an appropriations bill, we need to, before we go into third reading in motions, because in accordance with our rules, we will have to go into committee of the whole. So I recommend that we recess till tomorrow morning, come back at 10 a.m., and we will resolve into committee of the whole at that time. Thank you. We are in recess till 10 a.m. Senator Joseph Augustine, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, Committee of the Whole Appropriations, so that means I'll be chairing it so I can contact whoever I need to contact?
That's
Thank you.
correct. That's correct, Senator. Thank you. We are in recess till 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.